I would have sometimes this recurring dream, which was just kind of visions of the orphanage that I stayed at for 6 months before being adopted. And I used to wonder if it was a real memory or just something I'd imagined. But when I did go back to the orphanage as an adult, I recognized some of it from my dream. So technically that's my earliest memory, but it's just like the kind of barest fragment, really, of a memory.
So I was 2 when I came to the United States, between 2 and 3. And so the only thing I have is a bad dream about Korea. So I remember walking down a dirt road and probably crying out for a mother or a father, but crying.
Ce que je me rappelle, c'est que je me suis retrouvée sur une route. J'ai été perdue et un homme m'a retrouvée. Cet homme, en fait, m'a emmenée à l'orphelinat. J'étais sur un chemin de campagne. J'avais 4 ans, 5 ans, 4 ans, 4 ans et demi. Ce que je me rappelle aussi, c'est d'une maison avec les cuisines, en fait, près de l'âtre, où il y avait 2 femmes. C'est les souvenirs que je me rappelle.
I remember in the orphanage, it was run by an American lady, Jane White, and she had red hair, fair skin, freckles. And on the every Sunday, I remember soldiers would come and play with the kids, play with me. I remember having soup for lunch every Sunday for reasons unknown. Why I remember that.
The only memory that I have of coming over, other than the little snapshot memories of the orphanage, and when I say snapshot, I mean literally just an image, like what you would see in a picture, which I talked to my other Korean adoptee friends, and they have actual memories, moments that they remember, and that just really perplexes me. I remember the snapshot of the layout of the orphanage. I remember there was a playground and not a drop of grass anywhere.
Je me rappelle aussi de choses négatives. De choses qu'on m'a fait subir quand j'étais petite, quand j'étais en Corée. Et sinon, je me rappelle aussi que quand j'étais à l'orphelinat, j'étais une enfant triste. Je pleurais beaucoup. Et que souvent, je demandais quand est-ce que je partirais. Je me rappelle aussi d'autres enfants.
So my earliest memories are of living in a small one room of a complex with wide wood boards, a little cupboard in the corner, some blankets in an opposite corner, a door that opened to a courtyard, and then a door that opened to the front, no windows. And most of the time I was with my birth mother. She was gone a lot. I was told that she was gone a lot because she was working or looking for work. Probably the memory that I have that kind of sticks with me is related to food. Always being hungry. It just seemed like there was never enough food. So I remember spending time, it was sort of an activity as well as looking for food, was catching grasshoppers and finding them and then stringing them. If you look at a grasshopper, there's sort of a little shell at the back of their head connected to their body, and we would find long reeds of grass and string them through the back of the head of the grasshopper, sort of like a fisherman would have a string of fish, and take those home and light a fire, build a fire, and then just in the edge of the fire where there were hot coals, laying the string of grasshoppers and toasting them. Occasionally, not a lot, but I remember a couple of times when there were male visitors in our one room who came to see my mother and saw things that obviously weren't appropriate for a child to see. Many, many times I went to bed alone and my mother wasn't there. And sometimes there would be a candle and I would light the candle and would just try to stay awake to avoid the dark.
I remember very clearly that moment when I got put in the car to be transported, but memory is a funny thing. I had completely displaced my birth mother's face to my maternal grandparents' faces. And it wasn't until many years later that she told me she was standing there while I'm trying to grab the window and try to get out of the car, crying.
When I first came over to the States, my parents told me that what I told them was that I had been traveling from China in a wagon and had somehow gotten polio, and so then they gave me up for adoption, left me on the street somewhere where somebody was watching me to make sure that I was being picked up. And I do recall being on the street. I do recall feeling a little bit nervous and worried. And then I have some other little memories along the way, but then my other memory that's really very, very, very deep is remembering being on the plane ride from Korea coming over because I was lying on my back on the airplane seat, and I just remembered being extremely confused and baffled by how close the clouds were to the window.
When I was in the orphanage, I was one of the youngest one, and I had two older girls looking after me supposedly throughout the day. But I remember being alone most of the time. And my day usually was roaming around the orphanage, going up in the mountains, scavenging for food. I would always lay down on the ground and look up in the sky. I mean, that's basically, I felt that that's all I had. And I would always wonder, gosh, where did I come from as a 4 or 5 year old, asking, why am I here? I always watched the cloud formations. I always thought they were so awesome. It was like, and I would watch them floating by, and I always wondered, gosh, I wonder where they're going. Where is the cloud going? And I wanted to go with it.
First memories that I have is around 3 or 4 years old in a village. No cars, no electricity, clay houses, thatch roof, very rural. Rice paddies as far as eyes can see, right? And then I remember right at the age of like 5-ish, me and my mother basically got kicked out of our village. And we went to a town which I know now is Tondujeon, right? Closer to the DMZ, probably from Incheon area. And stayed there for about a year. And then me and my mother moved to a town called Bupyeong, which is home of Camp Market, one of the largest support commands in Asia at the time, early mid 70s. And then between the ages of 6 and 8, I lived in Bupyeong. That's where my mother, probably got back into prostitution. She was gone a lot, and I saw her and a lot of her girls. She was a mama son. I saw quite a bit of it. And then, and that was the first time that I kind of had friends in my life because there was a little gang of homeless kids that I used to run with. So I've had some interesting nights as a 6 to 8 year old. So, and then at the age of 8, I get dropped off at an orphanage. And between the years of 6 and 8, I got dropped off at probably 3 or 4 orphanages. But there's a reason for that. I always knew I was coming back. But I got dropped off at this one orphanage, and I was there for about 10 days. Couple of days before my mother, a couple of days before the timing of my mother coming back to get me. And I saw a couple get out of a black couple get out of a car. And, I was amazed. It was at the age of 6 when I saw the first black person, and I fell in love with black. And it kind of, in a weird way, I think I kind of fell in love with me and my idea of being black, even in the midst of, all this hate that I got from the Koreans. So there was something kind of magical, and that's the point. There was something kind of magical in that for me, that recognition of black, and then to see the most beautiful black people I've ever seen.
We were probably out in the street many nights, living up in the country. We were kind of up in the country, kind of, I guess I would say the foothills, down in Busan. And we would go up there and eat grasshoppers and pull red radishes from the fields, and we'd have these little matches that we would burn in a little coffee can with a bunch of wood in for the night. And every time we get home, we'd always be in trouble. It seems like we're always in trouble at some point. But it's interesting how much I do remember instances where, my brother and I have played with matches in the corner of our quilt, and, we burnt down our house. And I think that's kind of what probably prompted kind of this cascading effect of maybe not having a home, and my parents potentially separating. And so we ended up moving into our grandmother's house. And I think that's really where that kind of the discussion started in regards to, hey, maybe there's a better opportunity for me somewhere else. The moment that I kind of knew something was going to happen was the time my grandmother took me to the train station with my brother. And, there was a stranger there. She handed us off to him. And, it's interesting because it was just my grandmother. It wasn't my father. It wasn't my mother. And we went off on the train with a stranger. And, at the time, I wouldn't say, I said, okay, I'm being given away. Somehow my grandmother's, giving me away to the stranger, and I'm going somewhere. Of course I was scared. We were both crying. And, one of the last things that my grandmother said was, hey, when you grow up, come visit me. And that is very, very distinct. And it makes me emotional to talk about it.
I remember living above a store in a one room. Also, I remember just around the corner there were the outhouses. And down the hill was a cathedral. I remember I had an aunt. She lived in the city. And I do remember one of the visits, she was entertaining a black soldier. And there was things that I saw that a little girl shouldn't have seen. I remember vividly the morning when my mother gave us up. My teacher, this white gentleman, came to pick me up for school. I don't know if he's white, but this gentleman, she told him I wasn't going to school, and we had these pastries, which we never got. That was like a real treat. and she was crying and crying and crying. Once again, I am thankful for all my memories. I was watching a movie recently with Tom Cruise. I forget the name, but it's a futuristic movie. And he had these memories of his life with his wife. And it just really touched me. I cried. And it's because I can relate to him and his memories getting foggy. You know? You cherish them, but they're getting foggy.